r/ask Reddit. What's the trashiest wedding you've been to? Wedding was in a suburban driveway. The maid of honor stole the bouquet from someone's garden and the best man proudly announced he had shoplifted the rings. The groom wore a button-down shirt that said "duck off" in fancy lettering. The bride stopped in the middle of the vows to tell her mother to get the ducking kid out of here. It was her second kid by the previous bloke. When it was over, we apologized to the celebrant. He said he'd seen worse. You could have told me this was a scene from the show Trailer Park Boys and I would have believed you 100%. Trinity would have never made noise during the ceremony. A wedding on the beach behind Hooters. The officiant stood next to a trash bin, as if it was planned. The trash collector pulled up during the vows. Did he wait to change the bag? Absolutely not. Children at the wedding swarmed the couple like the flies around the trash can just after the kiss, stepping all over her dress. She bent over to adjust her sandal and a pack of Marlboro Reds fell out of the bust along with her right breast. It felt like we were rubbernecking instead witnessing a marriage. Edit. I'd ask how you all knew this was the panhandle of Florida. Open bracket. Pensacola. But when I read this post to my fiance, he added, hummingbird, you forgot to add the background of boats sporting Trump flags and rental jet skis. Faith rolling on the floor laughing. Okay, I am laughing out loud at the escaped boob. Dobby is free. I was actually the bartender but it was a hoot. First, wedding was outside and it stormed violently. Groom was hammered pre-wedding. Hit on all the bartenders. Then the DJ got hammered. Made lewd comments to women in the microphone. Then basically everyone was hammered. Knocked over the wedding cake which also happened to be a table with many candles. So the place caught on fire. Good times. Often wonder how that marriage worked out. Safe to assume that his wasn't a big fire. If the place burned down, you'd probably mention it. Yes, a few of us who weren't drunk put it out lol. The bride made a speech thanking her in-laws for financial assistance for the event. Her mother was not thanked and she was furious. There was a long hair table for bridal party and parents. It was made out of small tables pushed together covered by one long tablecloth. The mother pulled a small table out of the arrangement, catching the tablecloth and nearly destroying the head table setup. Now the bride got angry and there was much back and forth with various family members attempting to make peace. The mother refused to push back her table and began to invite others to sit with her. All people who were not meant to be seated at the front. Mother of bride continued to sit there and talk shit about her daughter, the bride, to anyone who would listen. I wonder why she didn't thank her. Possibly she'd contributed nothing but criticism. Narc parents are notorious for expecting thanks for doing nothing constructive. I can totally see the bride's speech having a subtext of thanks for picking up a ball that my mother dropped. Hoo boy, this is my time to shine. So my uncle was a preacher but also owned a restaurant. A 16-year-old got married to her 17-year-old boyfriend in the back room. Her name was Candy. After the ceremony she opened her wedding gifts like it was her birthday. One of the waitresses, Brenda, had given her old lingerie as a gift. I remember during the reception, Candy went out back to throw the lingerie into a dumpster while Brenda sang "These Boots Were Made for Walking" on karaoke for their honeymoon. Her mom bought them a room at the Holiday Inn around the corner, but they got bored so they came home. My uncle was a preacher but also owned a restaurant. This line just sets the stage for the whole story so well. LOL. I'm imagining it was the cathedral buffet and the uncle was Ernest Angley. I once worked a wedding where come time for the first dance no one could find the groom. Turns out, he went to the resort's shooting barn to shoot clay pigeons. Upon learning this news, the bride reacted by cursing up a storm on the dance floor. Okay, so this didn't go where I thought it was. Given the theme of these kinds of threads, I just assumed the groom was off having sex. Compared to the other stuff posted in here, this dude's a keeper. Goddamn, that's a low bar. Surely that video of the bride walking down the backyard aisle while dirty dancing to her own shitty recorded cover of Crazy Beach has got to be up around here somewhere. Here https://yowto bfskunskjiwas. Whoa. This definitely is a new level of trashy. I was struck by the poor guy in the plaid shirt with the WFT expression trying to cover his son's ears. Also, it appeared the groom and groomsmen were wearing blue bandanas on their heads. Ceremony was in a park, not booked or decorated. Just showed up and found a spot. Reception was at a scout hall. No decorations again. And for catering, the bride's family went through Red Rooster drive-thru and got a bunch of whole chickens and chips. Like 5 different cars went through one after the other and ordered. They didn't even pre-order. Groom and all his friends were high as kites, and only reason bride wasn't is because she announced she was knocked up. Groom and his mates bought their dirt bikes and after eating went out and rode them around the hall. It was so loud and muddy. So Bogan, how is the couple now? No idea. Groom was ex's friend. Haven't seen them in like 15 years. TBH, I can't even remember their surname. Only remember their first names cause they're as bogan as they are. Both of my middle sister's weddings. Don't get me wrong. She's the same one of my sisters and I actually really love her. But she has a, shall we say, unique sense of style. Wedding number 1 was while she was working as a carny and was held after closing time on the midway at some Podunk County Fair. I may well have been the only sober person there, and there were definitely more tattoos than teeth in attendance. She wound up leaving him when he turned out to be an abusive self-centered twat who contributed nothing to taking care of their kid. Wedding number 2, just last year, was mostly okay, and Bill is a really stand-up guy, but y'all, the whole wedding theme was camo. My sister wore a camouflage wedding dress and matching Crocs. Bill wore jeans and a dress shirt with a camo vest. The frigging cake was covered in camo patterned ribbons and IDK where the hell she got camo patterned silk roses, but the cake had a pile of those too. If the sane one is working as a carny, I'm extremely curious to know what your other sisters are up to. Unemployed former meth addict and just got dumped by felon number 5, while he was still behind bars no less. There were no tables and chairs, like none. They had an open bar but no ducking chairs. Everyone had to put their drink on the ground and hold their plate to eat. It was ducking crazy. Everyone just assumed that some sort of terrible thing happened where the tables and chair people didn't bring them, but afterwards I asked her, the bride, what happened, and she just said, oh, we would have had to pay extra for that. Did they get married in The Sims? Tragically, one guest died when they got in the pool and couldn't find the ladder to exit. Another was located months later, somehow walled into a 10x10 feet room with no exits, covered in excrement, having burned to death trying to start the oven that was in there with them. Probably my dad's second marriage, along the banks of a river with trailer homes in the background. He's wearing a tuxedo shirt and rainbow mirror sunglasses. The ceremony took place at noon. He'd been drinking since 5 AM. I had to walk one of the bridesmaids down a flight of steps as she was legally blind, and someone asked me if I was going to bang her. Sighs. Along the banks of a river with trailer homes in the background. He's wearing a tuxedo shirt and rainbow mirror sunglasses. The ceremony took place at noon. He'd been drinking since 5 AM. Absolute ducking legend. Please tell me he had a mullet and horse show mustache. No mullet, but definitely a horse show stash. He's had a buzz cut my entire life. I went to a wedding and a funeral home once. Drove by it 3 times before realizing that it was in fact the correct address for the venue. Reception and ceremony were there. Completely dry wedding too. The Scroots have their own traditions. We usually marry standing in our own graves. Makes the funerals very romantic, but the weddings are a bleak affair. I've been to a funeral home wedding too. The bride worked there, so got it for super cheap. It was nowhere near a dry venue, though. Lots of booze. A family member was at a wedding where the groom's mother was feeding Pakistani sweets to the bride. She dropped one on her expensive wedding dress. They can be sticky and messy, and the bride says, "You ruined my wedding dress, you beach." Grooms tells his wife to apologize. She refused, so the groom tells her she's getting divorced and leaves with his family. Everyone else start leaving too. They had signed the wedding papers a day before. Excuse me, what the duck? Marriage speedrun. At my aunt's wedding with her new husband, I got drugged by one of her stepsons. Almost got raped. Luckily one of my real cousins noticed I was gone for a long time and looked for me. He's the only one in the family who knew about my anxiety, so he worried about that. Caught the guy taking my shirt off by the kitchen counter while I was half unconscious. He called the police and I was taken home safely. Edit. I'll edit it since lots were confused. Sorry. Thank the universe for that cousin. He's a legend. We need more people like him. Please tell me you pressed charges or had his dong cut off. Camo print wedding dress that was borderline see-through. Walked down the aisle to the Scooby-Doo theme. No, nobody knows why they chose that song, including the couple themselves. They divorced a few months later after they both stopped cleaning the house in an act of defiance against one another. OMG stop, I can't stop laughing at the Scooby-Doo theme. Kinda want to ask hubby if we can get married again just so I can use the Scooby-Doo theme song. I don't even know where to begin. Ceremony was comprised of immediate family, then followed by a reception with all guests in a relatively nice hotel banquet hall. An hour in at 7 PM the open bar was completely closed down because multiple guests were throwing up in the bathroom sinks causing flooding. The groom was so wasted even before the ceremony but was blackout by the time of reception. During the first dance he kept his hands in his cargo pant khakis the entire time and ate dinner sitting on the floor in a corner of the hall while the bride sat at the head table alone. About 2 hours in, the groom randomly left and slept at their house while the bride stayed in the newlywed suite by herself. They are now separated, as you may have assumed by this point. The bride and her sisters did a striptease lap dance on the groom immediately following dinner, in front of his grandmother. And her sister? Sisters, plural. A family member of mine's second wedding reception was held inside her indoor gun range. The groom was obviously an avid hunter because the entire wedding party was wearing camouflage suits, and the bonus was the open bar consisting on 2 kegs of Coors Light sitting trash cans filled with ice. When I was getting married, I pointed out the Marcy Oak tuxedos to my now wife as a joke. The bridal shop employee that was helping us then proceeded to tell us about an upcoming wedding where the groom and groomsmen would be wearing those tuxes, and the bridesmaids would be wearing hunter orange dresses. Supposedly it was an outdoor wedding, and the wedding party would arrive via 4-wheeler. The thing that really sets the memory is the bridal shop employee's sotto voce remark of "nothing says nail me quite like hunter orange." To be fair, a gun range isn't the strangest place to find a family of mines. A 2 friends from college wedding was just awkward. Bride sewed her own dress which was a size too big. She's really slim and tiny, so she looked like she had a very conservative satin nightgown on that was a rush job. Their first kiss was at the altar. When they finished the pastor said, "Oh come on, you can do better than that." During part of the ceremony there was parents' blessing. Groom's family was quick and private. Really sweet. Bride's parents were loud and they bawled while talking for 15 minutes each. Reception was potluck and not enough food for those attending. Wedding colors were baby blue and lavender. A mutual friend was DJ and the mother of the bride passed him a note to read aloud to the guests. Poor guy then had to go. "Groom, your mill says you can pet the kitties now." The previous spring break mill had gotten bride a baggy, standard size shirt with kittens on it. Kittens just so happened to be about bust height. I offered to do flowers, boutonnieres, corsages, centerpieces, but the wedding party didn't store them as I had suggested, so the next day they were wilted and really sad. Did I mention this was a dry wedding? So they didn't kiss until they got married, but then their reception was full of sex jokes? Sounds like a repressed religious wedding, alright. It was in the middle of absolutely nowhere. It was a 5 PM wedding and there was no food served, and we couldn't just run out and get McDonald's or something because there was nothing around. We had to help set up tables. We had to fill out our own thank you cards. They even had an example for us to follow. "Dear, comma, thank you for the blank. We'll use it to blank." Then they asked us to help take down the tables as well. I refused to help and got the hell out of there. Also, no cake. Wait, what do you mean on the thank you cards? Like you gave the gift and then had to write your own thank you card for yourself? Went to a baby shower that did this. You fill in your address on the envelope, then what you bought on the inside of the card. She then wrote a thank you, my name, above that. I was staying at a really massive hotel about a decade ago, and a group of what I can only describe as rough-looking hippies were having a wedding reception in the ballroom. I was sitting at the bar ready to order when one of the groomsmen invited me to eat and drink. They apparently had too much food and alcohol. Of course, I obliged. Free alcohol and food, why not? When I walked in the ballroom, all I could smell was body odor mixed with a hint of food. It was so damn hot in that room. Some of them weren't wearing shirts, male and female alike. and almost none of them had on shoes. Only a handful of people were dressed somewhat casually. It was just humid, sweaty and warm in there. When I say rough looking hippies, just picture that stereotype in your head, and I shit you not, that's how most of them looked. Instead of a DJ they had a dude on the stage with drums, bongos, a guitar, a rain stick, and I'm pretty sure a didgeridoo. I didn't want to be rude, so all I grabbed was grilled asparagus, and then I left as soon as the guy walked out of sight. It was so disgusting in there. The next morning I noticed they had cordoned off the ballroom area, and they had a good portion of their housekeeping staff stacking trash bags into those rolling garbage bins. I felt so bad for them. I believe what you saw are referred to as Wookiees in the jump band scene. I went to a wedding that had a Matrix theme. The groomsmen all wore floor-length leather jackets and tiny sunglasses. The MC made a slideshow of images from the movie with the groomsmen's faces badly photoshopped on. They insisted on calling each other Neo and Morpheus while high-fiving each other. It was painful. There was a lot of tension at the wedding, and it turned out that the groom had cheated on the bride a few weeks earlier, but she had still decided to marry him. His family was really trashy and took the view that their son had cheated because the bride wasn't good enough for him. The bride's family was not trashy but pissed that she took him back, and obviously hated the groom and his shitty family. The sister was the maid of honor, and her speech was very sarcastic, just so glad to welcome you to the family, Greg, but it went over the heads of the groom's relatives. Everyone who knew the story was cringing. The groom's dad was loaded. He stood up and told a long and convoluted story about a wife giving teaspoons of sugar to God, which made no sense and seemed to have very sexist undertones. They cut quickly to the music, and the drunk groom's father hit the dance floor and started grinding with some woman who wasn't his wife. His wife sees and has a shit fit and starts screaming at him. They won't stop fighting, so they cut the music and have the four-piece high school band play classical music badly. It includes a squeaky clarinet, like a terrible foreshadowing from above. It starts pissing with rain and people start trying to politely leave. Last thing I see is the groomsmen running to their cars with their trench coats folded up over their heads to protect their tiny sunglasses, while the band plays the squeaky Matrix theme song. It was amazing. To protect their tiny sunglasses got me good. Hot damn. What a show. I forgot to add that they were all cops, and it was held in the middle of the day in the cop cafeteria at the police station. Probably going to get buried, but went to a fancy wedding at a beautiful venue. It was an incredible outdoor ceremony, with the reception inside a super fancy lakefront venue. All went well, until the bride's dad stood up to give a toast. The bride's dad and her mother had been divorced since she was little, so at least 25-26 years they've been divorced. The bride's side of the family is very well off, and with about 200 people in attendance, he essentially roasted the bride's mother for 10-15 minutes. He was talking about how she used to duck the tennis instructor he paid for. Then he went down the list naming the guys she dated after him. How she couldn't hold a job and just used his money. The mom had her current husband there, and then he turned his attention to that guy and was roasting on him for being the flavor of the week and how he won't be around when his daughter is back from her honeymoon. He then moved on back to the mother and really laid into her again. I mean, he was off the rails. It was like a Comedy Central roast of the bride's mom, but fueled by his apparent hatred for her. I had been drinking a lot, so at first I thought I was mishearing things, but the longer it went on I was sure I wasn't. I have no idea how no one stopped this, but they literally let him go on until he was done uninterrupted. He did not mention his daughter or the groom once. He just ducking roasted his ex-wife the whole time. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.